I'd like now to recognize Ms. Stefanik.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Supreme Court correctly decided Students for Fair Admission versus President and Fellows of Harvard College when they held that Harvard College's admissions did not comply with the principles of the Equal Protection Clause embodied in the Civil Rights Act. Now, Ms. Soman, previously, Grutter versus Bollinger assumed that race would be only treated as a plus in the admissions process, but we saw at Harvard that in some cases this was treated as a minus. Is this correct?
Yes.
And can you expound upon that?
Absolutely. So when there are only a limited number of seats available at any given university, it's inevitable that a plus factor for some students will be a minus factor for others.
And particularly as a Harvard College graduate, I'm very concerned that in 2013, Harvard's own Office of Institutional Research concluded that the university system was indeed biased with negative effects in the admissions process. And isn't it a fact, Ms. Soman, that they buried this report?
Yes.
I have concerns in the wake of the Supreme Court's decision. In one of the mailings that was sent out to alumni, the headline was Harvard United in Resolve in face of Supreme Court's admissions ruling. Do you have concerns about the compliance of the Supreme Court decision at some universities?
Well, I'm not familiar with that particular mailing from Harvard. I have seen similar statements from the heads of other university officials. In an amicus brief filed in support of the Coalition for TJ Cert petition, the Cato Institute documented many such examples of evasions, so I'm very concerned about lack of compliance, yes.
And how would you identify potential lack of compliance?
So statements from university officials would certainly be concerning. Changes in policy that don't seem to make sense in light of academic qualifications, but that instead seem targeted at engineering a particular racial composition, I would be concerned about.
Mr. Squires, I wanted to turn to you. In your testimony, you mentioned that it's universities themselves that benefit, not the students, from race-based discrimination. How does Harvard and how do other schools actively maintain internal incentives to keep discriminatory policies in place?
Well, what I meant by that is that oftentimes universities will particularly focus, for instance, on the incoming class, the freshman class, and talk about how diverse it is. And part of the reason is because they want to receive the social benefits that come with being able to say, you know, look at all the black and brown students we have. But again, there's a lot less emphasis on the graduating class. So this happens oftentimes when individuals will say they are choosing a particular candidate for a particular position based on race and sex. And what it does, it saddles that person with the burden of feeling as if they are not being judged by their qualifications, and allows the person doing the choosing to say how virtuous they are because of how progressive they are.
And Mr. Squires, how will the end of discriminatory race-based admissions help the next generation of college applicants?
I think one of the things that it would do is allow everyone on campus, ideally, to be able to understand that we are all here because we're based on the same set of qualifications. I can guarantee you that if in 2043, the highest performing students on the SATs and in terms of grades were black and Hispanic, no one on the other side of the aisle would say that too many of them are going to Harvard and Yale. So if we believe in equality, it has to be equal across the board, which means everyone has to be judged by the same set of standards. If we want to consider socioeconomic status, that has to be the same across the board. But what we can't do is say, for one group of students, you can come in at this particular bar, and for another group of students, you have to come in at a much higher bar.
Thank you. I yield back.